What if I told you that Ferrari is about to launch the most risky and revolutionary engine of the entire hybrid era of Formula One? An engine that could make them champions, or destroy their season from the first race? Is this the ultimate redemption or the latest madness for Maranello? January 15, 2026 was not just any day in Maranello. It was the day Ferrari stopped talking and started roaring. In an internal ceremony without major press releases, without crowds or television spectacle, the SF26 came to life for the first time. But it was not just another technical ignition. It was not a simple routine test. It was a ritual, almost symbolic moment, witnessed in the front row by the figures who will carry the team's destiny on their shoulders. Lewis Hamilton recently arrived at Ferrari after closing his cycle with Mercedes, and Charles Leclerc, the face of the frustration accumulated by years without titles. Next to them, director Fred Vasseur watched silently. It wasn't just the sound of an engine starting, it was the rebirth of an idea. The interesting thing about this ignition is that it came amid a wave of rumors pointing to possible delays in the development of Ferrari's 2026 engine. While other manufacturers such as Honda, Mercedes and Audi had already publicly shown their new engines, Ferrari remained silent. The paddock murmured. Some spoke of internal problems, that the 678 project had run into difficulties. But Ferrari, true to its style, preferred to remain in the shadows, perfecting on the dynamic bench before showing any indication to the public. The fact that this ignition occurred just after Cadillac's successful shakedown at Silverstone, the first customer to run a Ferrari engine under the 2026 regulations, added more pressure to the Scuderia. It was as if the student had surpassed the teacher in speed of implementation. But Maranello had other plans. It wasn't just about starting the engine, it was about presenting it when it was truly ready. Every element, every vibration, every sound had to convey confidence. Because what was at stake was not just the reliability of a power unit, it was the pride of a brand that has spent years accumulating frustrations, years promising to return to the top. Hamilton and Leclerc weren't just there for the photo. His presence had political and psychological weight. Lewis, seven-time world champion, did not come to Ferrari on a whim. He is here because he believes that the SF26 can be the machine that allows him to win again. And Leclerc, with more injuries than trophies, knows that this new car could be his last great opportunity to fulfill his dream with his childhood team. Both watched not only with curiosity, but with the contained tension of those who understand that their future, their legacy, depends on what that engine is capable of doing. This event cannot be understood without remembering the recent context. Ferrari abandoned the development of the SF25 in April 2025. A drastic decision, unprecedented in recent times. Fred Vasseur recognized it as a psychological blow for the entire team. For more than half a season, they competed without any real improvement while their rivals constantly evolved. It was a desperate bet. Let the present die to build the future from scratch. And this ignition, this first roar of the SF26, was the validation of that bet. The sound of the engine was not just a technical event. It was an act of faith. It was the moment when Ferrari said, without words, "We are back." And the most powerful thing was not the volume of the engine, but the silence with which it was received. A tense silence, loaded with meaning, that can only be understood if you have experienced the desperation of lost seasons, of strategic errors, of unfulfilled promises. This ignition does not guarantee championships. It does not guarantee victories. But it did mark a turning point. It was the symbolic closing of a stage and the official opening of a new era. Ferrari has put everything into this project. Every kilometer that SF26 travels will be a direct consequence of what began that day. And every future victory or defeat will have this moment as its origin. But we are not talking about just any steel. Ferrari has developed a unique alloy, incorporating copper and ceramic components, specifically designed to resist the extreme temperature and pressure conditions that new sustainable fuels will impose. This alloy is not only more robust, but also allows greater geometric control of the combustion chamber. That means the internal shape of this camera deforms much less when subjected to intense thermal and mechanical loads. The result: more stable combustion, fewer unwanted detonations, and superior thermal efficiency. All of this is essential in an era where performance is no longer measured just by maximum power, but by how that power remains constant throughout an entire race. The way in which Ferrari has managed to mitigate the weight increase of this material is even more fascinating. They have resorted to additive manufacturing technology, a kind of 3D printing of metals, developed in collaboration with Renishaw, one of the most advanced firms in this field. This method allows them to place the material exactly where it is needed and only where it is needed, optimizing every gram. Thus, they manage to produce complex geometries with incredibly thin walls, impossible to achieve with traditional machining methods. We are talking about engineering at the limit in its purest form. But this technical advance has not been free of uncertainty. Durability was the big unknown. The 2026 rules limit each driver to just 4 engines per season. If the cylinder heads do not withstand the necessary mileage, the bet becomes a strategic disaster. Therefore, for months, Ferrari kept both lines of development alive. Until the turning point arrived, the intervention of AVL, the Austrian company specializing in hybrid powertrains. Thanks to their advanced simulation work and fatigue testing, they were able to demonstrate that the steel cylinder head not only offered thermal advantages, but could survive an entire season. The moment Maranello decided to completely abandon aluminum cylinder heads, it became clear that they had crossed a line of no return. They bet everything on this solution because they trust that its architecture, its structural resistance and its ability to dissipate thermal energy are elements that will make a difference in a technical environment where 50% of the car's power will come from the electrical system. And when you have to coordinate that hybrid power with a thermal engine operating at the limit, you need every component to be absolutely reliable. Ferrari has opted for the most ambitious technical innovation in its recent history. But in Formula One, innovation does not guarantee success if it is not accompanied by reliability. And that is where the true challenge of the SF26 and its revolutionary steel stock lies. Because as promising as this solution is from a thermodynamic point of view, none of that matters if the engine cannot survive the brutal demands of a 24 Grand Prix season. The 2026 regulations set a limit of only 4 internal combustion engines per driver for the entire season. This means that each unit must travel, on average, more than 6,000 kilometers under the most extreme conditions possible. High temperatures, lateral loads and curves, constant vibrations, and above all, variable dynamic demands that put every millimeter of the engine to the limit. Any failure, any fatigue crack, can end in a grid penalty. And in a championship as tight as 2026 is anticipated to be, that is equivalent to losing a race before even starting it. And that is where the great transformation appears. The new MGUK, which goes from generating 120 kilowatts to a brutal power of 350 kilowatts. This increase triples the electrical contribution in each revolution. In practical terms, we're talking about 470 horsepower from the electrical portion of the system alone. In 2026, F1 will no longer be a category with a hybrid engine as support. It will be, for the first time, a 50% electric, 50% thermal category. This symmetry not only changes how engines are built, but how you drive, how you compete, how you think about your strategy lap by lap. Ferrari, with its new engine, has not limited itself to adapting its V6 to these conditions. He has redesigned it with a completely different vision. The SF26 architecture not only seeks thermal efficiency, but also operational stability to allow the hybrid system to deploy its power under optimal conditions. That's why the decision to use a steel cylinder head takes on a new meaning here. It's not just about resistance or material innovation. It is about offering the MGUK a controlled and constant thermal environment, where it can work with the maximum possible performance without altering the energy dynamics of the car. If the thermal engine suffers, the electric one will too, and vice versa. Furthermore, the 2026 MGUK will not only deploy more power, it will also recover much more. Up to 9 megajoules per revolution, a huge figure compared to the 2 MJ that were recovered during the first hybrid era. This energy will be obtained not only from braking, but also from liftoff, when the pilot takes his foot off the accelerator, and partial acceleration phases. This turns the car into a living system, always active in energy harvesting, always oscillating between charge and discharge states. And that requires control electronics that are as precise as they are aggressive. What Ferrari seeks is to build a performance ecosystem. It's not about having the most powerful engine or the battery with the greatest recovery capacity. It is about all systems working in harmony. That the thermal engine does not interfere with the electrical deployment, that aerodynamics favors energy efficiency, that the race strategy includes new consumption and recharging variables, that the driver understands not only his car, but the energy logic that governs it. This transition will not be easy. Many teams could be overwhelmed by the complexity. But those who manage to master this new hybrid language will have an incalculable advantage. And Ferrari, by deeply integrating its thermal design with the demands of the MGUK, aspires to be that team. Leave it in the comments what you think about all this.